One of history's greatest creatures was Bucephalus, the horse of Alexander the Great. Legends have been written about Bucephalus, claiming that he had supernatural abilities. Some of the oracles of Delphi retroactively claimed that any boy capable of taming the beast would be destined to conquer the world. The tales are almost certainly exaggerated. Chances are, the priestesses of Delphi were getting high off of the hydrocarbon gases which were released from geological faults beneath the Temple of Apollo. While it is unlikely that this horse was chosen by the gods of Olympus, the horse did accompany Alexander into the depths of the Persian Empire, conquering the known world. Contrary to the tales of the horse being immortal, Bucephalus would fall during Alex's conquest of the western Indian subcontinent. Alexander the Great, caring little for the countless human lives lost during his conquests, was emotionally crushed by the passing of his four-legged companion, and in the horse's honor, named one of the cities he founded after him. Today, the ruins of the city can be found in modern-day Pakistan. Bucephalus was not the first individually famous animal, nor would he be the last. Arguably, the second greatest general of classical antiquity was Hannibal of Carthage, Rome's greatest enemy. Hannibal was famed for his army of war elephants, most likely from the now extinct subspecies of Syrian elephants. These Asian elephants, native to the warm grasslands and savannas, would cross the Alps into what is now Italy during the Second Punic War. The last surviving elephant was known as Surus. He would be immortalized on Carthaginian coins alongside the general that would lead him into battle. Speaking of elephants, the Indian subcontinent has its own history of quasi-celebrity elephants who lived on temple grounds. The practice lives on to this day, particularly in Sri Lanka. The most famous temple elephant of all is probably Raja, who is found on Sri Lankan banknotes. Elephants would continue to gain notoriety due to their size and intellect through the use of circuses during the 1800s. The first circus elephant brought into the United States was Old Bet, brought as early as 1796, shortly after the Revolution. Old Bet was killed by a farmer by the name of Daniel Davis, who, according to some, was protesting the cruelty against animals by the circus. Killing an animal to protest alleged cruelty to animals is kind of like raising awareness about STDs by essentially copulating with street hookers bareback in public. Probably not the best idea. Sorry not sorry, Daniel Davis, but you were a moron. What isn't moronic, though, is our fascination with other living beings that we cohabitate this earth with. And how even as we are so immersed in technology, we still have that primordial connection with nature. And it just so happens to be that the internet has displayed our fascination, not just with animals as scientific specimens, but oftentimes animals as digital personalities. And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, along with house pets, is the subject of this video. Charles Darwin stated that humans are different to other animals in degree, not kind. In other words, humans share the same cognitive mechanisms, emotions, and reasoning abilities of other animals, but to a far more advanced, complex degree. Animals have always played an essential role in human culture, most obviously for the purposes of being hunted, of which we can see being depicted in cave art. Probably the second most common depiction after prehistoric pornography scenes. My favorite cave art representing animals is this one. This cave art has some guy undergoing a really cool cosmic magic mushroom trip with an antelope and whatever the hell this is. I'm just gonna claim that it's a brontosaurus. My source is that I made it up. Animals have also played a large role in various religions and folklore. According to Greek mythology, Zeus turned into a bull to seduce the mortal woman known as Europa. Pickup artists have yet to try this method. I know my audience is a sausage fest, but can any ladies inform me, if you are watching, that you may or may not be into bulls? I'm assuming women, generally speaking, would not be interested in this, but then I came across this one book called Morning Glory Milking Farm. Let's just get back to the main subject. Speaking of bulls, let's go to the subject of domestication, starting with dogs and later goats, cattle, chickens, etc. Granted, just with the humans who domesticated these animals, virtually none of the animals that were domesticated came to fame. Well, that isn't completely true. Here's a mummy of a pharaoh's pet cat. There are no Instagram posts about this feline taken during the Old Kingdom era, but I'm sure this furball is having fun chasing after laser pointer lights in the afterlife. These are rare instances of famous animals that were almost always tied to famous human figures at the time that they were alive. Keep in mind that during the age of Antiquity, very few people were capable of becoming famous to begin with. Maybe this ancient farmer could have made some TikTok videos with his goats, but the platform did not exist at the time. They were just using MySpace back then. This started to change with the advent of modernity. Bubbles the chimpanzee was to Michael Jackson what Bucephalus was to Alexander the Great. Here he is, trying green tea in Osaka City Hall. Now, this started to change more with the rise of the occasional mass media story, with the growth of newspapers, radio, and later television. Generally speaking, stories about famous animals were usually used for light-hearted filler to cushion more depressing or dire anthropocentric coverage. Who cares about stock market crashes or world wars when there are cute cats to hear about? The story of Pablo Escobar hit the presses in 1985, when it was reported that a black bear OD'd after eating through multiple containers holding over 30 kilos of white powder. Speaking of bears, the spread of zoos and aquariums also led to local celebrity animals. These individually famous animals got attention for seemingly human-like behavior, or perhaps even a human-like appearance, and that made them more relatable, and as a result they sold more tickets. As the world was transitioning into the digital age during the late 90s, a gay penguin couple would come to fame in Central Park Zoo. The name of the two penguins were Roy and Silo. The couple were given an egg from a straight penguin couple who had hatched into a baby by the name of Tango, and the baby was raised by the gay couple. Another famous zoo animal during this transition into the digital era was in a place you would not expect, Afghanistan. In 2002, before social media would dominate our networking, newspapers and television reported on a pig in Kabul Zoo named Khanzir. Khanzir literally means pig in the local Pashtun language. So naming a pig Khanzir is like naming your dog, dog, or your child, human. It turns out that Khanzir was the only Khanzir in the entire country. This was unsurprisingly since the country is overwhelmingly Muslim. In 2009, Pig the Pig got his 15 minutes of internet fame when he was quarantined during the swine flu outbreak. I could not find any resolution on the tale of Khanzir the Pig, but given the Taliban's takeover of the country, I'm afraid that he has not survived, and if he did survive, I'm pretty sure he wasn't turned into bacon or ham either. If I have any fans in Kabul, please visit your local zoo and tell me how the story ends. Most celebrity animals tend to be mammals, as they have higher intelligence and are usually furry, unless you count the cetaceans. And if they're not mammals, then they're usually birds. These critters tend to be a lot cuter and more appealing than, say, cockroaches. But there were some invertebrates who became internet celebrities. One of the first big ones was Paul the Octopus. As most of you know, octopus, along with other cephalopods like squid and cuttlefish, are highly intelligent. Paul was a common octopus who successfully predicted 4/5 of the 2010 World Cup games he made predictions on. 12 out of 14 to be exact. namely the games which Germany was competing in, given that Paul was living in a German aquarium. He did so by capturing a clam, mussel, or oyster in a box with the flags of competing nations. Some say that Paul, the octopus, had vast knowledge of each competing nation's football team. Others state that he had supernatural powers. Others claim that Paul simply liked the clams in one country's box over the other, which accidentally led him to making the correct predictions most of the time. But this explanation is total BS. Paul clearly had supernatural psychic powers. Trust me, bro. Another aquatic critter who came to fame during the early 2010s was Mr. Blobby, who belonged to a genus commonly known as blobfish. This dude was found far off the coast of Australia in the abyssal zone, roughly 4,600 meters deep. Much like the legends of Vincent van Gogh and Emily Dickinson, Mr. Blobby became famous after his death. He died in 2003, but was eventually resurrected into fame in 2013. The intense pressure under these depths can only be managed by creatures with unique physiological structures. When taken out of this environment, the tissue structure of the fish breaks down, resulting in a fish that looks less like a character from Finding Nemo and more like a Discord mod. This was considered to be the ugliest animal alive. However, anybody who has seen a naked mole rat or TikTok's To Pikachu would beg to differ. To be fair to blobfish, the typical blobfish doesn't look like this in its natural habitat when it's alive. Here's a picture of one that is alive. Blobfish are not the ugliest animal I've ever seen, but they're not exactly gooning material for degenerate furries either. There's a reason why all the creatures down here are blind. They just don't want to look at each other. An animal which is a lot nicer to look at than our deceased friend Mr. Blob or Mr. Blobby was Serge the Llama. Llamas have a certain inverted charisma to them. They aren't the smartest or the friendliest, and in fact one even tried to spit on me when I was hiking the Incan Trail in Peru, so f that llama. But there's something captivating about them. Perhaps it's their unintentional awkwardness. Serge was initially a circus llama, until some shit-faced teenagers took the llama out of its enclosure and hung out with this woolly critter on public transit, posting their pictures on social media before being arrested. However, seeing all the free publicity for the circus, the owners dropped the charges. Serge would spend the rest of his life as a celebrity guest for parties and sports tournaments. Another example of how getting wasted can sometimes result in unintended yet beautiful outcomes. Ask any parents who drank a little bit too much on their New Year's party. While exotic animals occasionally become e-influencers, the most common animals to become internet famous are of course dogs and cats. This is due to their proximity to humans, their charisma, and in the case of dogs, their ability to understand human emotions. I'm not sure if cats can understand human emotions. If they do, they don't seem to give a shit either way. Man's best friend and woman's best acquaintance. During the 2000s, a Shiba Inu by the name of Kabusu, and sorry for the mispronunciation, was adopted by a Japanese kindergarten teacher. Shiba Inus are one of the most popular breeds in Japan, but at the time they were quite rare outside of the country. They're loved for their cute fox-like appearance and affectionate nature, but also notorious for being stubborn and hard to train. Kabusu's claim to fame was being pictured on her owner's blog. The picture spread with adaptations including Comic Sans font. Comic Sans was, funny enough, created to be the font for a cartoon dog by the name of Rover for the software product Microsoft Bob back in 2005. The default text back then was Times New Roman, but it wasn't suitable for cute, grainy characters, so Comic Sans was created instead. The font became popular for early cat memes, usually with purposefully incorrect grammar. This was applied to memes of the Shiba Inu picture across Tumblr under the title of Doge, with an E at the end, turning the short O sound to a long O sound in English. Doge combined conventional cuteness with the mild trepidation towards the human hand approaching her. This became one of the biggest memes of the late 2000s till the early 2010s, with even cryptocurrencies named after the dog or Doge. Dogecoin would briefly become one of the top 10 cryptocurrencies in the world, even though it started out as a joke. On a more depressing note, there was even a Doge NFT, which sold for millions. The NFT in question sold for triple the amount of this 22-karat golden toilet paper roll. At least the latter provides you with the physical substance to wipe your ass with. Doge would re-emerge as a meme in 2022 under the banner of the Fellas, Eastern Europeans who sought to counter Kremlin misinformation during the invasion of Ukraine used the Doge meme as one of their symbols. These Fellas, as they were called, would be united under the banner of NAFO, the North Atlantic Fellas Organization. Another famous pet, albeit one which was not as aesthetically appealing, was a grumpy cat. The real name of the cat was a tad bit more serious: Tartar Sauce. Tartar Sauce was not the prettiest looking cat. If anything, the critter was so ugly that he was cute. The cat became a meme due to his permanent, seemingly grumpy face. Keep in mind that us humans like to project the way we display emotions onto other animals that may or may not present emotions the same way we do. Just look at how happy this crocodile is. He's clearly smiling, and if you come close to him, you can play a game called Death Roll. Cats don't display emotions with pouty faces the same way we do. Cats usually display happiness by propping their tails up. They slowly wag their tails when they're irritated. If your cat is wagging his tail, it isn't happy like a dog, it's probably pissed off at you. And if you were smaller than your cat, it would probably kill you for sport. Grumpy Cat was subject to the wider lolcat meme factory across Reddit and other major platforms. The kitty would become one of the biggest YouTube accounts dedicated to an individual animal. The cat's owner, Tabitha Bundenson, would sign a sponsorship with the cat food brand Friskies. Grumpy Cat would become Friskies' official spokesman, or spokescat, if you could call it that. There was even a lawsuit between the kitty's limited partnership and a coffee-producing limited liability company over trademark disputes. Countless other stories of cats who became internet memes emerged, each one cuter and more vacuous than the last. George Takei once stated that social media is kind of like ancient Egypt, writing things on walls and worshipping cats. Cats have become such a colossal internet phenomenon that this posits the question: why does an animal which lives in your house and chits in a box so captivating? This is most likely because cats are roughly the same size as a human infant and have the head-to-body ratio and eye-to-head ratio of a human baby. Oxytocin is a powerful drug. But it wasn't just pets who became internet famous. Sometimes it was pests. Raccoons are common urban wildlife in most of North America, and there are even invasive populations in Europe and Japan. If you've ever seen them, they are most famed for their ability to seek out garbage at any cost. This dumpster is a raccoon's 4-star Michelin restaurant. In fact, the city of Toronto spent quite a lot of money on raccoon-resistant bins, only to realize that the raccoons managed to open the supposedly raccoon-proof bins. One Toronto raccoon who came to internet fame, at least locally, was Conrad. Conrad was killed near an intersection between Yonge and Church Street, nearby the Freemasons Masonic Lodge. Was this a Freemason globalist Illuminati plot to sacrifice Conrad the Racoon to reptilian overlords and enact world domination? Maybe, but the most likely scenario was that he was hit by a vehicle on one of the city's most iconic, busiest intersections. The carcass of Conrad was widely photographed and posted on social media. A city councillor named the dead raccoon Conrad. I'm assuming the name did not come from the raccoon's parents, but I have yet to verify that claim. The corpse was removed, but word was spread through Twitter, namely the hashtag #DeadRaccoonTO. The city's heritage department even created a plaque to honor the legacy of Conrad. Granted, Conrad was more of a local digital celebrity in a digitized global age. Most people outside of the GTA have almost certainly never heard of Conrad or his self-sacrifice in the cause of meme creation. One figure which did become a global internet sensation, at least for a while, was Harambe the Gorilla. Harambe means "let's pull together" in the East African language of Swahili. On the fateful day of May 28, 2016, a toddler would climb under the fencing of a gorilla enclosure, and Harambe would greet the infant by dragging him around. Zoo staff would shoot Harambe to death for the sake of protecting the child. While this resulted in anger at the hands of animal rights activists, most people thought the zoo staff engaged in the necessary evil of killing the gorilla in order to protect the infant. I personally think they should have shot the stupid parents instead. There are only a few thousand western lowland gorillas in this world, but there are almost an infinite number of dumbass kids with even dumber parents. The story became a global online meme with songs and even a statue. Why is the stand going up the gorilla's ass? To some, this meme became a rallying cry for animal rights, but to most people it really just became a form of shitposting in the mid-2010s, the era of edgy comedy between the first two humps of the Great Awakenings. Now, I haven't mentioned any famous reptiles yet, so let's move on to Diego the tortoise, a Hood Island giant tortoise native to the Galapagos island of Hispaniola. Diego was born in 1910, roughly 3/4 of a century after Darwin first stepped onto the Galapagos. Diego became famous for preserving the lineage of his subspecies through the power of horniness. While other Galapagos tortoises like Lonesome George died as a volcel, Diego humped his way into longevity, or more accurately, the longevity of his descendants and their lineage, resulting in a total of 900 plus kids. And he did most of this after his 100th birthday. Thanks to pornography and microplastics, some guys who are in their 20s today are having trouble getting it up. Chad Diego was banging bitches after being a century old. Diego is still probably alive. He was released into the wild to eat leaves and mac hoes till the day he dies. A true Giga Chad. Now let's go back to pets. While cats are the undisputed winner when it comes to animal internet fame, many dogs would also become e-celebrities in their own right. One of these divas was Whitney Houston, a Dachshund who became known as the quote-unquote homophobic dog. To be clear, the wiener dog has no problem with wiener-on-wiener intimacy, nor did the pooch go on homophobic rants about Sodom and Gomorrah. The dog is actually owned by a gay couple, and they, along with many of their followers, would post ironic homophobic memes that would become quite popular among gay and lesbian fans of the dog. The parodic nature of the memes flew over the head of pseudo-journalist Taylor Lorenz, who wrote an article titled, quote, "This dog is the new face of online homophobia," in the Washington Post, not realizing that the memes in question were produced by gay people to mock homophobia, proving again that shitposting is a better weapon against bigotry than finger-wagging moralizing is. Granted, one thing that makes me homophobic is the fact that this gay couple thought it was okay to have a dog sit next to a glass of wine when alcohol and grapes can result in dogs getting kidney failure. Other examples of dog e-celebs were Izzy the Frenchie and Doug the Pug. Granted, there isn't any wider story to tell about these critters other than their ability to acquire Instagram likes. The human-dog bond is older than civilization itself. If you don't believe me, check out an old video I made on the subject which almost no one watched. These dog celebrities became internet icons as many young adults were absconding parenthood for becoming quote-unquote pet parents. Now, I have a dog, but I would never besmirch myself with the title of pet parent. Some claim that the affordability crisis has led to less and less people having children, preferring to take care of dogs instead. Others claim that dog ownership is a pale imitation to parenthood. Low birth rates are a continuing ongoing issue to be discussed, and the controversy has gotten so dire that Pope Francis once even spoke on the matter. Pet influencer accounts weren't relegated to your conventional pets. One well-known one was Sammi the Chicken. This chicken came from the charismatic breed the Rhode Island Red Hen. The chicken would undergo similar activities to a dog, such as going on walks with a leash and swimming in the Gulf of Mexico. She passed away 3 years ago. A moment for Sammi, please. Sammi wasn't the only famous bird. Chickens are usually portrayed as a form of, well, comedy, and they're typically not famed for being particularly intelligent, which is a good thing for those of us who don't want to feel guilty for eating chicken tendies. Parrots, on the other hand, are very intelligent and have become the stars in old media movies like Polly, as well as live variety shows. On the internet, Apollo G. Bird is an African gray parrot who has been the ongoing subject of various studies on object recognition and linguistic abilities in birds. Some have claimed that his abilities are on par with that of a human toddler. Animals such as parrots, crows, apes, elephants, monkeys, dolphins, cuttlefish, and octopuses captivate us more than others due to having more sophisticated cognitive abilities. Granted, not sophisticated enough to watch and understand a video about animal celebrities who got famous by being relatively smart. Speaking of animals mimicking human behavior to the amusement of humans, in a previous video I made about Wikipedia, I mentioned the monkey selfie copyright dispute. This occurred when a macaque monkey took a picture of himself using a wildlife photographer's camera. The picture went viral on social media and even got posted onto Wikipedia. The owner of the camera, David J. Slater, claimed that he held copyright to the photo, and therefore Wikipedia and news publications must get his permission and pay up first. The Wikimedia Foundation argued that it was part of the public domain since the monkey took the photo. The organization PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, claimed that the monkey should be given control over the copyright. I tried to contact the monkey's estate and lawyers, but no one answered my phone calls. Next on the list is Peanut the Squirrel. He was a male eastern gray squirrel, found and rescued by a man by the name of Mark Longo. In 2017, he attracted quite a lot of attention on Instagram. However, this would all come to an end. In 2024, October 30th, Peanut was seized from the man's home by the New York State's Department for Environmental Conservation and was quickly euthanized for rabies testing. The test resulted in a negative, so they pretty much euthanized the squirrel for no reason, resulting in widespread condemnation. It was seen as an example of government overreach, and some have even joked that it may have resulted in Trump winning the 2024 election. Someone should replace the snake on the Gadsden flag with a squirrel. While I am quite skeptical of the claim that the legacy of Peanut was to elect Trump into the White House for a second time, it is true that this incident did result in the introduction of a bill to prevent this sort of incident from happening again in the state of New York. On a less depressing note, let's go on to Deng, a pygmy hippo in a Thai zoo who became a widespread internet phenomenon, inspiring fan art. Her live streams have acquired numbers which put many a streamer to shame, and to be honest, this little porker probably has more insight about the world than your average streamer on Twitch or Kick.
Potatoes, small 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 potatoes.
And like with nearly every case of someone becoming famous on the internet, it would eventually inspire lame knockoffs, such as Haggis the hippo from Scotland. Sorry Haggis the pygmy hippo, but you are just a lame copycat. You are like all the YouTubers who just jump on trendy bandwagons rather than coming up with something original. Temu Deng. Fuck Haggis the hippo. Next up on the list is Buddy the Beefalo. A beefalo is a cross between a cow and a bison. Our buddy, escaped the slaughterhouse and lived on his own for around 8 months as a fugitive. He was eventually apprehended by the police, but for his tenacity was not turned into brisket, but rather was bailed out and has lived the rest of his life on a farm sanctuary. To my knowledge, he did not get a cameo on Morning Glory Milking Farm. Unlike cats and dogs, we typically don't have strong attachments to cattle. But Beefalo managed to garner a great deal of love from the general netizen public. Writer Hal Herzog is a leading scholar in the psychology behind people and our relationships with non-human animals. In his book, Some We Love, Some We Hate, Some We Eat, Why Is It So Hard to Think Straight About Animals?, he argues that the relationship between humans and animals is so complex and dependent on a variety of psychological, sociological, geographic, economic, historical, and technological factors that are extremely different from one another, but oftentimes make it impossible to be consistent morally on our approach with different creatures we cohabitate this world with. Our approach to dogs, roaches, and cattle are vastly different from each other for a variety of complicated reasons, to the point that we're all kind of hypocrites in the way that we manage these matters. Maybe the reason why we find these creatures so captivating, even in our advanced digital age, is because in spite of being simpler than us, and let's keep it real, dumber than us, we see watered-down versions of ourselves in them. Certain patterns of behavior, certain emotions, just in a more, well, simplified form, and perhaps unintentional form. As we enter the age of artificial intelligence, perhaps our relationship with animals will give us some insight to how we deal with non-human intelligence that is perhaps less advanced than ours but still pretty advanced, or perhaps even just as advanced as ours, or even perhaps more advanced than us. How will a super intelligent AI view human intelligence? Would they like to play with us like a dog or a parrot? Utilize us like a pig or a chicken? Or even kill us like a cockroach? I remember listening to the theoretical physicist Michio Kaku state that part of the reason why aliens haven't visited us yet is because they would consider humans to be so primitive that they wouldn't even bother being interested in making contact in the first place. This is under the assumption that the psychology of these aliens would be anything like our own, which is not a given. But if it is anything like our own, well, this just wouldn't stand up to scrutiny, because us humans, the supposedly greatest minds that have ever existed on planet Earth, do find lower life forms to be fascinating. Maybe aliens, which are so much more advanced than we are observing us and our civilization with the same amusement that we have, watching an octopus opening a jar.